The New York Times did a story indicating Jack Daniels may have been started with the help of a slave.
Turns out it was a true story, and she wanted to know more and find out for herself.
It was intrigue, but also I'm a bit of a rebel.
His story went missing, but what's important is that the truth has finally found the light.
And now we know that Nearest Green is the only known master distiller for Jack Daniel Distillery number 7.
She went from just telling the story to being inspired to become a part of continuing the legacy. And this is a $1 billion company.
Yeah, it took us a little over 7 years to get there.
A unique episode today with founder of $1 billion company Uncle Nearest Whiskey, Fawn Weaver.
And I am on the pulse with Bill Anderson.
Guys, welcome to another episode of The Pulse. You know everything that we do here, people with interesting stories, doing cool things. So I was excited to have Fawn Weaver, the CEO of Uncle Nearest, like serial entrepreneur, here with us just because the story is so cool. And welcome to The Pulse.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about you and the whole kind of serial entrepreneurial thing.
Sure. I started my first company about 30 years ago.
Okay.
And it's a PR and special events firm. And what we now know, what I specialize in is a field that did not actually exist at that time, which we now know to be product placement. And instead of, exactly.
So kind of marketing and coming up with innovative, creative ideas, successful businesses.
Yes, yeah.
Did you stumbled into the story of Jack Daniels?
I did.
Like, how did this happen?
It was on the cover of the New York Times International Edition. I was in Singapore for a few days. And the front cover had this large photo, what's on the cover of my book, had this large photo of Jack Daniel, and has an African-American man seated next to him. What is so unique about this photo is it's the only known photograph that Jack Daniel took with other people. And to have this African-American seated to his immediate right, people were trying to figure out, who is this person? There had to be importance of it. We now know it was Nearest Green's son, George. But the other piece of it, when you're looking at it, was the headline. It said, Jack Daniels embraces a hidden ingredient, help from a slave. And so as an African-American in another country, when I'm reading this, I'm just blown away that we're learning about this person, we're learning about this story.
So it was intrigue. But at that point, you didn't really have any connection to this. You just saw it and you were interested.
It was intrigue, but also I'm a bit of a rebel. So what happened after that headline and that photo came out is immediately the internet decided very quickly. I teased all the folks that were part of Black Twitter at the time. I said,
Right.
This was y'all. Okay. They decided very quickly that Jack Daniel was a slave owner. He stole the recipe. He hid the slave. Literally, there was nothing in the story from the picture in the headline. That's it. No one read the story. No one dove in. Nothing. They came to that conclusion immediately. So within 24 hours, it was everywhere with that storyline. And so I'm looking at this photo and I come to another conclusion, because you're talking about a photograph taken in 1904.
Okay.
If you want to hide the contributions of an African American in 1904, you simply leave them out the photo.
Right. You're certainly not posing next to them.
Exactly.
Like, these are my people.
Exactly. And I started if you open up the book, I started the very book, the beginning of it. There is a photo, maybe just a few pages in. There is the actual photograph of it, that.
Okay.
The reason why I did that is because you will see that it's not just that he placed the African American to his right, it's that the entire photograph is around the African American. George Green is in the center.
He is.
Jack and everyone else is off center.
Okay.
And so I'm looking at that and saying, okay, this was a statement. Jack was making a statement. The question was, what was that statement?
And you got all that from seeing the picture, the article.
I really do tend to look at things in a way that people usually miss. It's that rebellious side, that when everyone is saying things are one way, I'm looking for,
I'm gonna find the other story.
Let me see if there's something.
Story.
Let me see if there's something true here that doesn't mirror where the herd has decided to go.
So Black Twitter's blowing up. There's criticism, down with Jack Daniels, like boycott, whatever.
All of it.
All of that coming out. you decide to dig deeper.
Yes.
You start uncovering this story. When you actually go to Jack Daniels and their family and say, I'm trying to get more information.
Yeah.
I don't know that, like, are they excited to talk to you when they're getting slammed everywhere?
The family, so what was very interesting is as soon as I arrived in Lynchburg, I was there to interview one of Nearest's descendants and happened to be in the library. You know, have you ever booked a home on VRBO? You actually have to tell the owners of the home who you are, a little bit about yourself in order for them to approve it. Well, coming to Lynchburg, we did that. So Lynchburg was already a buzz because the town is this big. It was already a buzz that there was a New York Times bestselling author and her husband, who's an executive vice president at Sony Pictures, were coming to town. And so when we were in the library, that's when people figured out while we were there. And the librarian, she immediately calls the second eldest living descendant of Jack Daniel, who promptly comes to the library.
Small town living is different.
It is different.
It's
You got
different.
they literally have one stoplight. So she comes into the library, and here's the thing. She came right over to where we were and introduced herself and said, I'll be happy to help you with your research. It was more of a, we're going to shut this down. Because if you think about it, Jack Daniel is so well known, but the only biography of him is 1967. Someone else tried to do a sort of partial biography of him, but even in his book, he says when he showed up in town, no one would talk to him. Everyone shut him out. The book is really flawed because no one helped him to put the pieces together. And so when she came in and she said that, I told her, I looked at her and I realized, I said, okay, there's concern here. She knows who we are. She knows why we're here. I get it. And at that time, her family's being dragged through the mud.
Right.
And so I looked her in her eyes and I told her, I am not here to harm your family's legacy. I actually think the press has this wrong. I think social media definitely has this wrong. I believe this is a story of love, honor, and respect. And that's the story I'm here to find. And to her credit, she said, well, then I want to help you. And she pulls out her cell phone and she gives me the name and number of one of Nearest's descendants that had been doing genealogy on not just Nearest's family, but all of the African-American families in that town for 30 years. One of the things that Jack's descendants said when she came to the library, she said, you know the farm where Jack grew up and where he learned how to make whiskey, yada, yada, yada. You realize it's for sale.
Okay.
I get a call from her cousin, and her cousin said, you met my cousin Judy in the library. She had to go out of town. She said, you want to go see the Dan Call farm? I'm a realtor. I'll take you. Exactly. So 313 acres, what we now know to be the home of the original Jack Daniel Distillery, but not just Jack Daniel Distillery, but Jack Daniel Distillery number 7. And now we know that Nearest Green is the only known master distiller for Jack Daniel Distillery number 7.
I feel like the stars just lined
Oh,
up
for
this journey.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense. The house where the 2-story Greek Revival home where Jack grew up, the prior owners that had owned that property for the 50 years leading up to this time, they were afraid their daughter would fall out of the second floor balcony, so they completely locked off the second floor. It was a time capsule. The wallpaper is hand painted, peeling off the walls, and the insulation that was used are all newspapers dated October 10th and October 11th, 1898.
This is amazing. Next on The Pulse. Now, some suspected it was a story of stolen legacy, but it was actually pretty close to the exact opposite.
This isn't just a story about Nearest and Jack. This is also a story about an entire community in which blacks and whites coexisted.
This is a special home on a special piece of American land. I'm surprised it's still here. This isn't a set. We're in Tennessee, in the hills above Lynchburg.
The property had been on the market for 15 months. When we drove up to it, it was completely overgrown. There were 100 cattle head that were literally just running the property. You couldn't really visualize what the property looked like when Jack lived there. So people that would look at it, they go, okay, well, this was where Jack Daniel grew up and whatever, but it doesn't look like it anymore. And my husband and I, we looked at it and we could immediately see when that building is gone, like get rid of every structure that was not here in the 19th century. And we've got an extraordinary piece of American history. And we have it on the National Registry. We restored it to the way that it was when Jack lived there.
Somewhere in this story, it then becomes a business idea.
Yes. So by the time I had met approximately 75 of Nearest's family, as well as every African-American elder that ever lived in Lynchburg, I hosted a barbecue event. Everyone came back to town to tell me about their upbringing and what it was like growing up in Lynchburg, Tennessee. And so it began to quickly evolve into, this isn't just a story about Nearest and Jack. This is also a story about an entire community in which blacks and whites coexisted side by side in the early 20th century. I mean, these people were 90 years old. Nearest's granddaughter was still alive when I got there. She was 104. You have all these people that were still alive that were able to share their stories. But the thing I love about talking to people over the age of 70, they don't care. They say exactly how, there is no filter.
Right.
They don't owe anybody anything. They're going to tell it to you exactly the way it is. And they were sharing these stories about blacks and whites during a period of time where I just never even thought that we ever got together in the South during that window of time. But what was really clear is that people wanted to see Nearest honored. They rallied around this. They brought in as much,
Even Jack Daniel's people.
Everyone.
Okay.
The entire town, Jack's family, especially Jack's family.
Coming up, how starting her business, it changed a whole community.
And I was looking at the young people and going, my God, they don't understand the stock. My father would say, you come from good stock. Yeah. They don't understand the stock they came from.
Nearest Green was a slave here, and later a free man. But this isn't just a story about a master craftsman and an innovator. It's a story of a friendship. Nearest took the boy under his wing, taught him well. They became good friends.
So Black Twitter had it really wrong.
Really wrong.
So this wasn't it wasn't an angry story.
No.
It wasn't animosity. It wasn't stolen legacy.
No.
These families not only coexisted, continued to work for and with Jack Daniels and had a lot of respect for each other.
Absolutely. It began with Nearest and Jack and passed down to their generation.
This and Uncle Nearest and the business now makes you one of only, make sure I get this right, one of only 5 African-American women to found and lead an over $1 billion company.
Yes.
5
Yeah.
in the history of the United States.
Yes.
So this story led to launching this.
Yes.
And this has grown to over $1 billion business.
Yes.
Fastest growing spirit in
whiskey in U.S. history.
How? So how did we get to the? Teach me.
You know, it is where you're talking about. It seems like everything aligned. I think that this was just meant to be, and I'm just the steward of it. But I do believe that someone else could have done this if I had not done what I was supposed to do. So I believe that truly that I was purposed to do this, that this was intended for me to do it. But I also believe that if I had chosen not to do it, or if I had not done it the way that God called me to do it, I absolutely believe I'd been like Saul to David. He would have just taken it from me and given it to somebody who was going to do it right. And so I believe that there's a lot more at work backing this. I'm just the face, if you will. That property should not have been available. No one knew that Jack Daniel Distillery didn't begin where it currently is. They had no idea that they had to go back 20 years to the property I had just purchased. They had no idea distillery number 7 ever existed. That was a part of our research. So when you see all these things that have just happened, I'm not that good.
You came there with the desire to do the right thing, to try to make sure people were being respected and honored.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they were so happy that somebody wanted to do that,
Yeah.
that they just wrapped their arms around you and embraced you.
Yeah.
Are they, the Jack Daniel people, the Nearest Green family, are they happy and honored by this?
Absolutely. So the thing with Nearest's family is they can go anywhere in this country, walk into a bar and say who they are, and the level of respect and the honor that they get. It's one of the things that I think a lot of companies who had African Americans as a part of their origins don't understand is they're afraid to share the stories. They don't know what the backlash will be. But the other side of that is that if we can get more of them to share our contributions, the level of respect that these families then get being out there and how it changes an entire lineage. When we came to this, before any bottle of Uncle Nearest was sold, that legacy of excellence had been lost over the years. And I was looking at the young people and going, my God, they don't understand the stock. My father would say, you come from good stock. Yeah. They don't understand the stock they came from. And so I told them literally on a whim, there's about 50 of Nearest's descendants. We were all at a church. We were all, talking about this. And I told the young people there, I said, if you get into college, you have a full ride. That's before the first bottle of Uncle Nearest ever sold. That's before the first bottle of Uncle Nearest ever existed. I said, you will have a full ride. And to this day, every single semester, we have Nearest's descendants that we're paying for to go to school, paying for their books all over this country. And so someone could look at it and say, she came to this from a place of giving. Mm-hmm. And this would be true. But I think there's a lot of people that come to a place of giving that don't have this level of success. Yeah. This was absolutely set up and aligned to succeed. My part in it was not giving up at every hurdle.
Right.
And there's a lot of them. And there's what seemed to be insurmountable for, I think, a lot of people. I just kind of look at it and go, I'm going to get over that wall. Like, this isn't an option. This is what I was built to do.
Next on The Pulse, be clear, she's all about business, but also about simple truth.
I think what people miss is how America was built. America was built on the entrepreneur spirit.
Nearest Green's blood runs through my veins. We are here for one thing, to secure Nearest Green's name in history. And I'm the one that gets to carry on the legacy. I am beyond honored.
I came into this industry now in 2016. In the marketplace in 2017.
Less than 10 years.
Yeah.
And this is a $1 billion company.
Yeah, it took us a little over 7 years to get there. But when you look at all of the people that failed in that 7 years in our industry, it's astounding. I've watched them come in, I've watched them go out, I've watched them build, I've watched them fail. And it isn't because what they were doing couldn't work. It's because they decided to give up. Because it was too hard.
There are a lot of these stories in our community.
Yeah.
Not this specific one, but there's a lot of stories of developments and knowledge and passing on and not necessarily stolen legacy.
Yeah.
Is this a best practice, for people who want to do it the right way and continue these legacies and share these stories?
I think what people miss is how America was built. America was built on the entrepreneur spirit. You're going to go back to Carnegie, to Rockefeller, to Vanderbilt, to Tom Gold. You're going to go back to all these people that at their core were entrepreneurs. Our country was built on capitalism, and to believe that it was built on anything else is just foolish. Then the only way these stories will ever be told and remembered is there has to be a capitalistic piece to it. And so if we're going to share our stories, figure out how to tie it to something. If we invented something, okay, how do we figure out how to tie that to something that is tangible for people? The stories come and go. We remember them, we forget them. Okay. And so the challenge is that can't be the way we cement our stories. That can't be the way we pass on our legacies. It can't be entertainment. There's too much entertainment. What can we pass on that will still remain, that is tangible? What does that look like? And so I do think it's a best practice. I think more of our stories can be told this way.
I end every show with the concept of use your voice for good.
Yeah.
I feel like that's been the whole foundation of our discussion. What does that phrase, use your voice for good, mean to you?
Man, I would say what it means is using your voice to help free people. And by helping free people, it's really so many people are locked into their minds of what they can't do, what they're up against, how they are being held down, why they can't crack through the ceiling. I really remove every excuse. No person can have an excuse, read my story, and come up with a reason as to why they can't also succeed. But you can do what it is that you set out to do, what your heart desires to do, what you feel you are called to do. You can do it if you don't talk yourself out of it. And most people talk themselves out of what they should be doing.
Guys, thanks so much for watching what I guess is a special edition of The Pulse with best-selling author and entrepreneur Fawn Weaver. Such a cool story. I really enjoyed hearing the history, the analysis, how she got from just wanting to tell a great story to being the founder and CEO of a billion-dollar business, being history herself. I hope you enjoyed it. And in most cases, but definitely in this case, I encourage you to go listen to, download the entire unedited edition of the podcast. This was fun. I hope you enjoyed it. And I leave you today, as I always do, reminding you whenever you can, use your voice for good and have a good one.